Data.gov is the administration's effort to put all of the government's data that is not secret or classified on one website available to the public. So far, there isn't much data on there. It's not that easy, it turns out, for agencies to figure out how to get data sets that are very large, very complex, sometimes written in very old programs, in formats that the public can use. And once we do have all the data there, we're going to need very good search tools so that people can find what they're looking for. And as a practical matter, when we do the research on who's using this, it's mostly researchers. To think that members of the general public will be downloading data sets and analyzing them, that's not the typical way that most people want to interact with their government. Still, the idea that the government's data would be available and that you would be able to find it is an important new idea. Apps.gov is another. On one website, this is for internal government agents, they can see business applications, productivity applications, social media applications. In some cases, the government already owns the application. In other cases, they've already built the application, so we don't need agencies going out doing procurements, writing requests for proposals, thinking about what applications they should use. The government has already made some of these decisions. They've already paid for things, so we make it easy for agencies to find that. Lots more innovations. A few I'm going to skip over. This is Andrea Di Maio. Some of you might know him. When the eGov ministerial meeting was here, he was one of the panelists in the keynote panel. He's at Gartner, and he used to be a European civil servant. Just quickly, his idea, his view, these are from quotes from his blog, are that governments should be using commodity technologies. If you want a site for people to gather, this is Di Maio's view, use Facebook. You don't need to build a government platform for that. I think these are views that are going to be subject to a lot of debate. Someone wrote into his blog to say, you know, when you open up the space for citizen participation, you can overwhelm the back office. In other words, what are you going to do? Who's going to analyze all of this information? If you're obligating yourself to be responsive, you better be prepared to analyze and to be able to act on what you're hearing. Otherwise, you raise expectations. Is Government 2.0 a market? Vendors certainly hope so. Di Maio ends by saying, the reality is Government 2.0 has to rely on internal government skills. Why? Because it is political decision makers, policy makers who ultimately understand where their governments have to go. You can't leave it in the hands of vendors to tell you what you should be building. It is not just a market opportunity for IT services firms. Civil servants really need to be in the driver's seat. Civil society. Ushahidi, MIT Technology Review made David Kobia their Humanitarian of the Year. Ushahidi is a fabulous platform developed by African software developers, some American, some European software developers. It's a very exciting development. Ushahidi means testimony in Swahili. What you can see here is a handheld device, BlackBerry cell phone, iPhone, through which people, wherever they are, can send information, usually text messaging, to produce maps. What are these maps for? They are for visualizing what's going on. We won't read all of these. Our second distinguished speaker, the secretary from Cape Verde, talked about monitoring voting and voting abuses. Ushahidi starts as a platform for citizens to report voting abuses during the elections in Sudan. It has since been used all over the world to crowdsource that kind of information, to make what's going on in real time visible on the World Wide Web. It has been used in the aftermath of crises, after the earthquake in Chile, after the earthquake in Haiti, after the flooding in Pakistan, to get knowledge from people about what's happening on the ground in real time and to converge it on a map so that you have a picture of the landscape. You can do this much, much faster than you could possibly deploy people to go out and collect that information. This is the Haiti emergency map. Here's the voting rights abuses map. This is a use, as many of you know, of crowdsourcing, distributing the work of gathering this information, leaving it to citizens to enter these reports. Here's a similar crowdsourcing site we've built with some help from my research center after the Gulf oil spill from British Petroleum. We wanted to make it available. There are other sites like this for people to report what was happening to wildlife and birds. There are people who have information in very remote areas. There is time-sensitive information. Crowdsourcing and these sites have been very, very important. After the earthquake, this was used in Haiti to identify where medical aid was needed, where food was running out, where water was contaminated, where people needed shelter. These are just some of the NGOs, firms, governments that were helping. Here's where institutions come back in. It's marvelous to be able to put all this information on a map, but if you're a civil servant, I'm sure you're already asking, what do you do with that information? People tell you they need food, they need shelter. Knowing that there's a need is one thing. Being able to act on the need and respond to it is another. This is from a report that was produced at Tufts University. In conversation with emergency services, NGOs, they learned that deployment of something like this has to be predictable. There has to be, dare I say it, some bureaucratization of how this works so that it can connect up to the NGOs, to the government offices that are going to have to deal with response. In the Pakistan floods, one of the things they learned was not to ask people to text in their needs because there probably wouldn't be capacity, quite frankly, to meet those needs. So they specifically want to manage expectations by asking people to report observations. So the platform is not meant to promise to people that they'll report something and their needs will be met, because you can quickly see how people could become disillusioned. So these things need to be managed carefully. There are loads of civil service organizations that perform watchdog capabilities. Civil society has always had this role. The internet makes it more easy.